Like, why is that important? You already touched on a little bit of it in that, hey, you know what? One of which is a lot of tax dollars go into this type of research, right? So why is this such a big such a challenge that's worth solving, at least from your perspective?
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons, right? Yeah, and I think you're right. Like one simple one is that public good, right? A lot of this is public good funds. It should go back and become public good. Accessibility of information is actually kind of crucial to this, right? I think there's another reason I think this is important outside of that argument, which is that we need to make sure that we have a process in place that essentially means that you shouldn't trust who did the research, right? It's not about like the name of the person or the journal it's in, right? Like you trust research because like it constantly keeps interrogating itself, right? So this process, this scientific process of basically saying like, it's not about getting a right or wrong. It's about trying to say, I think I'm more right now. And really it's about like, right, it's reducing uncertainty. If we don't embrace this, if we're not really open with what we're doing, if we can't do more replication research, it makes that process really hard. And I think it makes it really hard for the public to be able to like trust science, right? Because like it's really like trusting that process. I'll give you an example of like in a different space of like where I think this is really important. We could do COVID if you wanted to, but I'll actually go back to like mammograms, right? There was like a recommendation on changing the age of when mammograms would occur. And I think a lot of people got very confronted, like, why would you change that? Like, why would the recommendation change from one age to a different one? And that's because research is constantly updating itself, right? It's constantly saying, I don't think I'm right all the time. So I'm just going to keep taking more data, right? Or keep looking at the same data again to see if I can kind of like improve that to put it into practice. And that might mean telling the public, hey, what was right, or what we thought was quote unquote right 10 years ago is not right anymore. So to me, like when we look at replication, we're actually doing the same thing. We're trying to say, listen, there's a lot of information out here. Don't take it at face value. We have to keep beating it up. Like we just don't know. So I'll go one more thread back into that argument of economics. To me, in the preclinical cancer biology space, to me, this is like super important because we're moving from all this research, this investment in basic research and translational research in an attempt to get something out into the public space. And you probably see headlines all the time. Oh my gosh, this new study in shows X, right? Yes. And that's great. Yeah. I think it's awesome to have that excitement. But I think like the research we've done and like what Bayer Amgen is trying to say is like, yeah, but like hold off, like just wait a second. And I think it's also back to like not just investment of dollars, but also like that hope, which is I get really, really upset when I see us run to first in human too fast. It's not because we shouldn't, right? These are really, important things that we're doing, diseases that we do need to find some way to make life a lot better, detect it earlier and figure out ways to get closer to a cure. But I don't think running towards first in human trials is the way to do it. I think instead we need to fail earlier in the pipeline, make that more open and transparent, and put our resources, because it's always limited to something better, right? So if I have a study and I can't replicate it, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that maybe I should not run to first in human. Maybe I should sit there and say, maybe I should spend more time on the bench doing something else before doing millions of dollars and including human lives into this. Because like my worry is just like, that rush actually can kind of like cause a lot of like, mistrust and misplaced hope. And it's like misallocation of resources as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and you're, just to be very clear, you're not suggesting through the publication, the work that you do, you're not suggesting that 54% of papers are fake, right? That's just to be clear, so everyone's clear about that.
Yeah, let's make this really clear too. Yeah, let's also call out the specific papers we looked at, right? Like we're not saying any of those are fabric. That's a completely different story. So there's like two narratives here we can talk about. One that we did not touch on at all in these projects. We tend to not, as an organization, really delve deep into it. There are others that do, and thank goodness they do, which is fabrication. Right? There's been recent stuff at Dana-Farber, for example, right? That hit the news. Probably people found it. That stuff always confuses me, right? Which is like, oh my gosh, like you're in a field trying to generate knowledge, and yet somebody's kind of fabricating it. That's really crazy to think about. That's not what we're talking about, because that there's an intention there to like deceive. We're talking about actually what I think is a more natural process of science that we just don't embrace enough, which is I might get it wrong. And that's because the process is about not trying to get something right. It's about trying to get something less wrong. And that's a really interesting concept to think about. And it's really hard to wrestle with. So yeah, even in our papers, not the field at whole, like it's not trying to make a general claim or a specific claim to an individual paper. It's trying to say, listen, If I can replicate something again, it just means I increase my confidence. Yep, that's probably really good. And if I can't replicate it again, it doesn't mean the original is wrong. It could be. It probably means we just don't know enough, right? I couldn't pick it up. I couldn't take somebody's finding that they published, have somebody do it again. That just tells me something's missing. And it means I don't have as much confidence as maybe I should, so I should take pause. That's at least that's the approach that we take, and that's really important because that means you can calibrate how to use evidence, because you are just changing your confidence over time. And in the end, you're always going to have to make some policy decision with whatever evidence you have, right? COVID's a great example of that. But don't you? I mean, to me, it's always like, but don't you want the best evidence at that best moment in time, like whatever it is? So replication to me is like a huge tool that we need to use more in research to be able to have more confidence in our findings.